like my father, he brought value every time that he went into a sales call. And like my father-in-law, staying relevant with technology and making sure that you were always providing yourself that differentiation on both fronts to make sure that you're staying successful.
Welcome to RevOps Champions, a podcast designed for revenue professionals looking to advance sales and marketing initiatives through the role of RevOps within their organizations. In each episode, we feature leaders who are leveraging technology to drive operational efficiency, revenue, and improve the customer experience. Listen in and learn how to become a better RevOps leader within your own organization. Let's get started.
I'm so excited again today to have my guest, Paul Pirkle from Mid-America Paper. Paul, thanks so much for being here and creating this episode of RevOps Champions with me. We've had some great conversations in the last, year, 18 months. And I look forward to sort of digging in a little bit to learn more about you, Mid-America Paper, and how you think about, growing a business. Would you mind giving us a quick introduction of, who you are, what you're doing now, and kind of how you got there?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Paul Pirkle, again, as you said, and I'm president of Mid-America Paper Recycling. Mid-America Paper Recycling works nationwide. We set up recycling programs for companies, and we work with, as the name suggests, we're into paper, but we're into so much more. So when we first started talking about RevOps and some of the opportunities, it's very germane to what we do on a regular basis. We've been in business since 1926, so we're an older company, but at the same time, I feel like that we're very technologically advanced in what we're doing. And I believe that we're on the leading edge of where a lot of other companies in our market are not positioning themselves. And so it makes for a nice opportunity for us to be able to come together with as a company that was founded in 1926 and kind of leading the edge, but also in the fact that we're also very technologically minded at the company, which has also benefited us greatly.
Hmm. That's awesome. So you're only 4 years away from celebrating your centenary, which not a lot of companies get to do.
They don't, and it's very special. I mean, it's really nice to be able to see the generational. It's a family-owned company, and I'm not part of the family that has been part of it, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to see that the generations that come through and the people that are involved and as you say, there's such an attachment to the family and having that opportunity to meet several of the family members, even generationally, it's been very special, and that's special to me.
That's awesome. The topic of 100 year, they actually call them 100-year businesses, even though they might want to be around for longer, versus the typical thing that you see more often in the media around, like, exiting in 3, 4, 5 years or 10 years or whatever. Are you is that kind of the culture of the company? Is like, we're here to be around forever kind of thing?
Yeah, I really believe so. I mean, it's one of those things. I think that's one of the reasons why I was brought in to make sure that we're positioning ourselves for the future and seeing where we're going. It's nice when you have that type of time frame because you say there's not a lot of companies that make it to 100 years. They're either they're not doing the things that are necessary in order to be able to stay relevant, and then in an industry like what we're in, being able to have some of the changes in technology and communication and overall development of making yourself relevant is also
Mhm.
very important. So over 100-year period, to make sure that we can see the changes, we've seen the partnerships, we've seen the suppliers that we get from our generators that have waste over to our customers who we're supplying paper to. It's pretty amazing to be able to see what we've been able to do in that regard. And yeah, so the company's strong. The people that are the owners of the company, love the business. They want to stay in the business. They want to continue to pursue the business. It's just more or less managing the day to day and how we want to be able to move into that next generation and that next 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mean to take us off track here, but it's just been interesting. I've seen this over the last maybe 18 to 24 months, this increase in the number of companies that have actually that we've come across who have, like, put their stake in the ground and said, yeah, no, we don't have an exit strategy. We're building a like forever company. One of the terms they use is an evergreen company.
Right.
And I'm not sure if you've heard of the Tugboat Institute, but that's one of the organizations that's kind of trying to connect all these companies that are want to be around for a longer time versus those who have a more sort of short-term strategy, which has been
Oh, that's interesting.
fascinating to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, but I definitely research it.
Yeah. Happy to share more there with you. Paul, well, thanks so much for the introduction. One of the things that you and I talked about as we've been sort of catching up over the last few months was you shared that early in your career that a system to keep you organized was a competitive advantage for you. Can you tell me a little bit more about, how you learned about that idea of being organized and having a system would give you a competitive advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a dynamic story. It's one that I refer back to often because I believe it was the place in my career where I got some really good advice about where I needed to go and how I could mentor from other people who had been successful. My
Mm,
father has been in sales for years, and one of the things I always observed through him was how he took the time to really understand where his clients were going, what they needed to do. He would bring value to them each meeting. He would go and visit the stores that he was selling into and really try to understand what he needed to do prior to a sales call. And then my father-in-law was really into technology, and in taking both of their experiences was pretty instrumental in developing my own habits. My father-in-law, when I first started getting into sales, he goes, I don't know much about sales. I've never been in sales, but the one thing I know is that people that I've seen that have been successful have used some systems, a CRM, Salesforce automation systems that have kept them organized. And I would highly suggest that get a computer, get your Salesforce automation system that works for you. There's one at the time it was Act I was using, and I just jumped into it with both feet, and it was amazing. I was self-employed. I didn't have a lot of money to start out with. And so when I got into that, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and take a loan out. I bought a computer, I bought the software system, I invested in my business, and I was very young. And I needed to be able to have something that differentiated me from everyone else. The other thing is that I was wanting to expand my territory. I was at in Illinois and Wisconsin, but I wanted to move into other states in the Midwest. And I knew that if I were going to move into those other states and expand my territory as I needed to, then it wasn't just going to be good enough to be able to have those accounts in my database. I needed to be active with those accounts because as you're self employed, your whole function and your whole ability to maintain your ongoing business is to make sure that that funnel stays full. And you have to make sure that as you continue to expand the territory that you not only are expanding them as far as the database, but you're also following up with them on a timely basis and that you also stay in front of them. So when I got
mm,
into the ACT program, I mean, I got fully engaged. I was setting up fields. I was making sure that my notes were completed. I would come back from traveling. And at that time, going back into the early 90s, times have changed so much, but you'd have a brick of a computer, it'd weigh, 10, 12, 15 pounds. Carrying that on the road was somewhat cumbersome. But at the same time, at the end of each evening, you would put in whatever notes you had. And then when you followed up with those customers next, that you were able to show that you listened to them, that you were following up with them, and you're able to stay with that sales process. And what resulted in my ability to stay organized is that I ended up being able to, at a very young age, outsell, the my colleagues who weren't using a similar system and who were still doing it by paper and file folders and doing the traditional approach at that time.
mm,
And I felt like at that time that I really knew that if I was going to continue to be successful, I needed to continue to go and hit that leading edge. So like my father, he brought value every time that he went into a sales call. And like my father-in-law, staying relevant with technology and making sure that you were always providing yourself that differentiation on both fronts to make sure that you're staying successful. And that has really made all the difference to me in my career is just starting out correctly and making sure that are able to tie in everything that you know. And I expanded that territory to 2,500 accounts that I was calling on. I was making phone calls automatically through the system at time that it tied into the modem, tied into my phone call, making 50, 60 phone calls a day, following up with people, making the notes, making sure I was traveling when I needed to travel, just really investing fully into the business to make sure that I was one, providing for my family, but I was also making sure that I was relevant to the customer base who was really wanted me to bring value to them. And that helped me just unbelievably in my career.
Thanks again for sharing that great story. Sort of moving on to, I guess, a continuation of that. So, what is the role and or value of technology today across marketing, sales, and customer service or customer success in your business or just in business in general?
Yeah, within our business, as I just mentioned, we've done a nice job of being able to stay ahead of technology. And several years ago, we added a platform called C-Trade, which is the ERP system that recyclers use, and it's very specific to recycling. And the one thing that we found about that is that it provided us with so much information, and it also allowed us to make so many connections with our both our suppliers of generated scrap and then also with our customers. And we were able to record everything in that. And one of the things that I noticed right away when I came into the company 4 years ago is that we were really leading the edge, on that side because of the fact that we have this system in house. The one difficult part about C Trade was the fact that it was hard. We had some canned reports, but if we wanted to do any other type of reporting, then we had to create those reports through other functions. And so over the course of time, we've evolved into many other parts of technology. So we've added HubSpot to
Hmm.
help us with our Salesforce automation. So we've done that within the last couple of years. We
Hmm.
also then brought in Domo. Domo is a business intelligence tool where we can visually see what's all happening in our business, and we're able to take that information out of C-Trade and integrate it with our accounting platform and be able to tie all that together. So then what ends up happening is that you have a nice reporting tool that allows you to graphically see what's important to you in the business. And so when we had that technology platform as C-Trade, it was great to be able to pull reports and certain canned information. But if you wanted to really lead your business and lead the management of your business through technology, then synthesizing all of that data and understanding what that data would mean to not only us, but also for our customers, then that was really important to us. So we have continued to evolve in the side of technology that's brought us to a lot of different technology platforms that also have allowed us to be able to get deeper with the client,
Hmm.
provide them better information, help them grow, and being able to point things out within our data that allows them to better run their business. And we're really mission oriented here and educating our customers on what it is that they can do to improve and how they can use continuous improvement through that data is incredibly important to us, and technology helps us get there.
Yeah, I love how you just tied that together at the end there. The technology and the data component, which we might dig into here in a little bit. And then you mentioned something else. Well, I guess two things I wanted to just check in with you. So C Trade is specific to your industry, right? Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. Maybe that's probably a software that listeners wouldn't have heard of before, but it's essentially the your ERP, which is designed specifically for your industry and the needs of that industry.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the other thing you mentioned was synthesizing, which I want to just see if your understanding of the word synthesizing is maybe the same term that we use, typically, which is integration or integrating, where you're integrating your ERP with whatever CRM slash sales enablement tool, in your case, HubSpot that you're using with, and then integrating that with Domo so that you have a continuous flow of the data through your tech stack.
That's right.
That, okay, with that's the same way that you see it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
So
and that's what Domo really allows us to be able to do that because we can then through our SQL server. So the SQL server ties all this together in the integration, and then through that synthesizing of all that information, we're able to then see it in a dashboard.
Yeah, exactly. Which again is, the dashboard or the reporting, those are all the critical parts at the end of the day that you need, which is again the combination of the data ending up in the right place at the right time. And of course, the dashboard is typically part of the technology solution that you have, where
Correct.
what we refer to as your single source of truth, where it doesn't matter where the data is flowing in from, is if it's marketing data or sales data or customer service data, it's ending up in one place where you can again, I like that synthesizing from a data perspective and then integration from a technology perspective. But that's really what we're looking for, and I just love the way that that ties back to what you've been doing for decades, which
Yeah.
is just systemizing what you do to be more efficient at how you keep in touch with your customers and how that impacts your revenue numbers. I mean,
That's right.
I just love that story. Now that we're sort of getting into some of the, we've just talked about two of the key components from our perspective of what we call RevOps, revenue operations, which you and I have talked about a little, and you mentioned at the beginning. What does RevOps mean from your perspective?
Yeah. RevOps was a completely new term to me. And when I started to research a little bit, and I've seen a lot coming through on the internet now about RevOps, and since you and I have talked about it, and really what it has done for me is really helped me to be able to define what it is that we are truly trying to drive their organization, and that's engaging our customer base to make sure that we are on top of every need that they have, making sure that we're proactively communicating with them. Also, then
Mhm.
tying in our marketing, because marketing and sales have always been somewhat at odds. There's always something where marketing is trying to push in one initiative and sales is trying to push another initiative, and how do they blend and how do they come together? And then you have the service organization part of our organization, our operations side of our organization. How do all of those stay together so that we're not going into different directions and that we're not becoming a siloed organization, but instead combining all that to under one umbrella, is making sure that from a RevOps perspective that we're communicating not only externally but communicating internally so that we're all on the same page. And when we do that, and when we successfully communicate what it is that we are doing and what our strategy is, then that's when we really start to take off. And notice right away when we're on the same page with one another, we are the best we've ever been. When we are not communicating, and then we quickly realize how failed of an organization we can be if we don't communicate. So the RevOps thing keeps you on target, and also allows you to be able to monitor how you are communicated internally, and making sure that that is more proactive in the communication versus just reactively responding to somebody's request. And I think from a sales perspective, that's been my
Mm.
strategy, ongoing, is always reaching out to people before they're reaching out to you to keep you front of mind. But the same thing happens internally, is keep in mind with the people that are inside your organization with data and with information that can help them in their daily walk through this business. And I think by combining all those things together, it just makes for such a stronger organization. And I, even since you and I started talking about this, I've even become more interested in researching it, reading about it, understanding what other companies are doing, and again following that model of how to become more efficient in each thing that we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you were talking about, I mean, and again, yeah. So that's really a good, I think, a good description of what RevOps is meant to do. And I guess at a high level, the way we think about it is both, and this is what you were saying towards the end, is both having that efficiency with regards to your customers, but also the internal efficiency for your teams, where and you talked about making sure that your teams have the data, and I would add the tools that they need to be internally efficient. Because what we've seen with our implementing CRM systems and marketing automation platforms and integrating those with whatever other technology our clients are using. When many of our clients came to us originally to focus on the internal operating efficiency of their customer facing teams, but what they saw that they weren't expecting was that their NPS scores and therefore their customer satisfaction was going through the roof. And it didn't take all that long for the penny to drop for everybody that, if you have a happy internal team because everything is working, they have the tools that they need to take care of the customers are going to be happy. And of course, it generates additional revenue, whether it be referrals or growing existing accounts. So the revenue that then drops because of all this efficiency and happiness and satisfaction just drops straight to the bottom line.
Right.
And you suddenly, start to see why, coming back to your earlier story, why being organized, not just as an individual, but being organized across the entire team, no matter whether you have a team of 3 or a team of 33 or a team of 333. Obviously, the bigger you get, the more complicated it becomes and the more important it becomes to be organized. And I do, sort of tying it back to my takeaway from when we spoke the last time, it really is your competitive advantage in whatever industry you're in. And that's
Right.
very much, how we and HubSpot, they talk about this RevOps as a go-to-market model to give you a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so that is great stuff. Digging a little deeper into RevOps. So I guess just to clarify, and our listeners have heard me say this multiple times, but for anyone listening for the first time, the way we think about RevOps, you've talked about technology and data. We've started touching on the people, so the teams in
Uh-huh.
sales, marketing, customer service, and we've talked a little bit about systems, which we categorize as processes. So it's people, processes, data, and technology. Those are the 4 components of RevOps, and the goal is to align those 4 components. So you're aligning the teams. So that, and you talked earlier about the sort of the opposite of this is creating silos. So
Right.
by implementing either some or all of the RevOps strategy, what you're doing is essentially breaking down any silos or gaps that you do have between your teams, a clearer handoff in the process between, for example, marketing to sales or sales to customer service, and then back again to marketing. So it's just aligning those things, of course, and then aligning the data. So every business has high level objectives that marketing is responsible for so many qualified leads, sales is responsible for so much revenue, customer service is responsible for growing accounts to whatever the metric or KPI is. One of those metrics is referrals, which then goes back to marketing and back to sales, and you create this flywheel that we talk about a lot. So that's sort of just a kind of a reminder of how we think about RevOps, which is just aligning your people, processes, data, and technology. And it's, I guess, just one additional note is one of the things that we still see too often is businesses investing in technology, hoping that the technology is going to fix the data, the processes, and the people. And of course, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Any technology, whether it's a kettle or a toaster or you name it, is there to make the people, the processes, and the data better, faster, and cheaper. So technology isn't going to do that if you haven't figured out the other 3. So
Right.
we do make sure we spend a lot of time on that component before we go and do an implementation, and just keep reminding our clients that aligning those is a critical part of being successful with implementing any technology, whether it's an individual technology or a stack. So every person I interview for this show, I'm interviewing because they've succeeded in business or are still currently succeeding. But as we all know, success is not a straight line and increasing always from left to right. There are always
Right.
bumps along the way, and that's why we exist as business leaders, is to solve the problems and challenges as they happen. So the question I always like to ask is, what is a challenge that you've had? And then more specifically, you know, what challenge have you experienced in the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years was solved or is currently being solved by any combination of, marketing, sales, customer service, product, IT, or just RevOps in general at Mid-America Paper?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think that as you stated, one of the things that we have to do in our business is we have to continue to look and see what it is that we can bring to the table and utilize as much experience as we can to be able to solve problems of the day. And so when we do take a look at where we have been and over the last couple of years, as we recognize there were certain constraints in the data that we were collecting, we take a look at data through different types of Excel or pivot tables, and we've really tried to break it all down. But we knew that there were other opportunities out there to expand our reach. We even had struggles when it came to bringing in a new salesperson and who's calling on those salespeople and are those customers. And so, how do we solve that problem? And so, by bringing together as we have, with Domo and with HubSpot, those two areas have helped us out a lot because now we don't have the laborious task of creating all of these pivot tables. We use a SQL server to be able to drive that data on in a real time basis. When we
Mhm.
take a look at our accounts and who's calling on what accounts, we have a real time server that is tracking that information for us. And if somebody is called on a certain account, then we have that information that's generated through the notes that we can have as a repository for everybody to look at. So those
Mhm.
are a couple things that we've seen in the past. And then when we get into the marketing side, one of the areas that we really were attacking is trying to become a subject matter expert. And we have 96 years of experience, but are we passing along that information that helps educate the market in what we've learned over those years? And
Mhm.
so we believe that we are a subject matter expert. We're not new to this game. We've been in it a long time. We have a very good reputation. So how do we get that out to companies? So working with
Mhm.
our marketing firm to create an SEO strategy, to create a strategy where we are putting relevant information and documents into LinkedIn, putting it out in front of people with through blogs, through news, being intentional on that front has
Mhm.
helped us to be able to close the loop on that branding and understand that Mid America Paper Recycling is the leader in recycling in this country. And we have from coast to coast, we have experiences in developing recycling programs for companies. And so through all those experiences, we're able to bring even more value to companies that, all over the place. That's what's very rewarding is that we have the data, the sales, and we have the marketing now all tied together that lead us into, other opportunities. We also can take it into our own facility here. We have a plant here in Chicago. The plant here in Chicago is able to benefit from what experiences we see from coast to coast because we can bring new technology back into our facility here that even helps us to be able to become more relevant, in the operational side. So we've been able to track our inventory differently. We're able to change around our costing structure and how we're even moving materials through our equipment to make that more efficient based on other things that we've seen in the marketplace that then have gone into our IT systems that have been able to verify that what changes that we've made have benefited us as an organization. So I would come
Mhm.
back to the fact that there are several areas that we had gaps or constraints, and as I mentioned, we weren't enabling our internal people to have the tools necessarily that they needed in order to be able to get to that next level. Now we've provided ourselves with the tools, and now we can provide our customer base with the result of those tools and the result of our education to become the subject matter expert that we have intended to be and the goal that we set to be that voice in our marketplace. And I believe it's been very effective. We've seen our LinkedIn connections and followers go through the roof. We've seen companies have mentioned on a multiple basis that we are doing things that nobody else is doing in our market. which we know of. I mean, we definitely know that we're doing something special. We just need to
Hmm.
continue to push that edge of the envelope and continue to chase that down and do what other people are doing that are highly successful to make sure that we always stay in that leading position.
Yeah, you've pulled on a lot of different things that we see as part of the value chain that we try and help our clients with all the time. Where you're talking about, again, what we call inbound marketing, where if you have all this great content and thought leadership content and what have you that is going to be helpful to folks out there, it doesn't cost a lot to share that. And by sharing it, you're helping folks who might really need and benefit from that information. And of course, by and when they are helped by some of the content that you've shared on your social channels like LinkedIn and written and other types of content, they will, again, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy where
Right.
you know you again are just strengthening your position as a thought leader, and that will result in additional business. So it's, to your point, it's taking care of a lot of your marketing at a very low cost. And one of the things we talk about more and more now, that more businesses are thinking about, it used to be only technology companies and software companies that talked about the two most important metrics being lifetime value of a customer and CAC, or customer acquisition cost. The things that you're talking about are exactly the things that drive those two metrics, because when you're doing that kind of inbound marketing, it costs less than any other kind of marketing you can do. So you're driving down your cost of customer acquisition, which is the goal, and at the same time you're driving up the lifetime value of your customers, because the referrals that you get and the fact that you're always giving, because you're hearing and receiving the data from your customers, you're giving them what they need in a proactive way instead of a reactive way. So that's a great example. And because the reality is that no matter what industry you're in, you know all our customers and clients are exposed to the same increasingly high benchmarks of what they expect from any business that they deal with, right?
Right.
Whether we're working or we're at home in the evening shopping, the websites that we're going to continuously raising the bar of what our expectations are. And if the next
Right.
morning at 8 a.m. you're back in with your business cap on and you're looking for a business solution, and that benchmark is not met, you're going to keep looking until you find a business that has met that benchmark. And the differentiator is typically two things. It's the technology that you're using and the fact that you're speaking the language that the prospect or the customer is expecting you to speak, that resonates with them. Yeah, I love how you tie that all together. So that kind of leads me into the next question, which is, I was just talking about the fact that, and which is actually the reason that we started Dynamico, was back in '08 and '09, we just saw this massive change in the playing field in sales and marketing and how it would impact businesses, because the iPhone had really caught on and changed mobile telephony. Facebook had become a thing and really started what the social media boom that we see today. And to us, it was an explosion of what was happening very slowly, maybe for the previous 10 or 15 years, but that suddenly leveled the playing field for businesses. But it also made it extremely challenging, especially for smaller businesses, so small, mid-sized businesses, on how to keep up with how they're going to keep connecting with their customers. And of course, this was accelerated again in the last 2 years through COVID. But
Right.
we're living in this very, very customer centric world where even when we are the customer, our expectations are extremely high, that whoever we're researching to buy something from, that they understand what it is, what our problem is, or what we're looking for.
Right.
How do you think, just bringing it back to sort of the B2B space, how does business technology impact or help in improving customer experience?
But multiple ways, I believe, in today's world. I mean, we have to be very nimble in our approach. One thing that I've seen that hasn't changed is kind of going back to the fact that we need to be able to continue to add value each and every day to what our clients are expecting. What has changed is that the ability to continue to see areas and to find areas where that value can continue to be added. You know, that some people feel like that all things have been invented. And what I'll tell you is that not all things have been invented. There's a lot of areas where people are doing some really special, things within our industry that hasn't been tried before or hasn't been done before, or they haven't really thought outside of the box. They've thought inside the box, and what's that is created is that we will do the same things that we've always done. But if you take a look outside and really think about other industries who've had success, what have they done in order to be able to be successful in their own right? So even within, we're working on some projects right now where we call on companies who make corrugated boxes, and I'm working with a corrugated box company right now to design a product for, for one of our customers to help them in a recycling process. Now, this is not, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know that it's been done before, but we're trying something that would be new and innovative to be able to make it easier for this particular customer of ours who has a major problem with the recycling issue that they can't solve through traditional processes, and
Mm-hmm.
we're changing that game to move them into an area where they may be able to have a have more success, be able to hit their goals, be able to save costs, and we're doing that by integrating our strengths with one of our customers that is somebody who we're working with to be able to help them in their recycling, but they're helping us now to be able to take their tools and their talents to another company. So be able to tie all of that in where we now have the ability to innovate and we're able to communicate based on our customer strengths by understanding who they are and what they do by getting into their shops and seeing what makes them really tick and what differentiates them. Now we can take their differentiation and apply that to somebody else who also needs that differentiation applied in their realm. So again, being in sales, being in marketing, customer service, operations, tying all that together and then keeping your eyes open and keeping your head up to see what you can observe through other companies and what they're doing has
Mm-hmm.
helped us to be more innovative. And that goes into the technology platforms that we've added. Even you and I talking about HubSpot initially and doing the research into that, making sure it was the right platform for us. There are other very, very good platforms out there, but
Mm-hmm.
HubSpot fit our culture and what we were tending to do. There were
Mm-hmm.
other companies that had business intelligence tools that were similar to Domo, but Domo fit what we wanted to do. And I think
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that have helped us to be able to keep our eyes up and our head on a level playing field to be able to look out there and see what we can do to benefit, our customers and grow our business that way.
Yeah. Again, I love how, I mean, you essentially are saying the same thing that is like core to who we are as a business. So one of our four core values is challenge the status quo. And originally we tweaked it a few years ago. Originally it was embrace change, but we realized that that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to do, even though
Right.
that's really what it's about. Because if you think that you can keep doing the same thing and keep getting the same results as you used to, I'm sorry, that's not going to end well. I haven't come
Right.
across any industry yet where that will work. Even the most, traditional industries are starting to be, disrupted by at least the businesses in those industry who have not adopted the fact that we've mentioned this multiple times, even just on this show. We kind of think of the whether you like Jeff Bezos or not. He has this culture at Amazon that every day is day one because he knows that on day two, whatever you did on day one is going to be obsolete. And as soon as you start thinking that you have it figured out, that's when the trouble is going to start. So, and it is directly to your point, is directly related to value. So, the technology is changing how value moves in a relationship between any business and any customer. And if you lose track of where the value has moved to compared to yesterday or last week or last month, that's it's going to negatively impact you. For our last question, Paul, and that is, as a revenue leader, what are you most excited about in the next year?
I think that the biggest thing that I'm excited about is to see how some of these systems that we put into place, continue to benefit us. I mean, we are only starting to peel back the onion on what it is that we can do. And, we're not unlike any other company where we struggle with acceptance of the tools. We have, as you've mentioned in the past, and people have mentioned, change is very hard for people. They don't like to change. They like doing what they have always done. So when you see that, I think that eventually people are either going to be early adopter to a technology, or they're going to come to it over time because they realize that they have to. So continue to push that envelope to that next level and seeing where people will adopt it and seeing how this takes off. I know that even when we are at our most basic adoption of some of these, that we're still ahead of the market and looking at some of the devices that we've invested in. And I think
Mhm.
that's really the important part, is that we're continuing to invest in our business. We continue to look for new ways. We don't want to become just another recycling company. We want to be the best recycling company where the customers that we service see us as a huge value to their business. I mean, we're bringing revenue to them, we're reducing costs, we're improving their business by being affiliated with Mid America Paper Recycling.
Mhm.
And to do that today, you can't operate the way you've always operated. You have to be able to provide them information. And the best information today comes through data. We've got all of these worksheets and spreadsheets and data that's out there, but who is really taking them in and trying to make some worthwhile information feedback loop to the customer, so they know exactly what they've done and how well they've done, and are there areas to improve upon? And is somebody pointing that out to them? Information
Mhm.
without really going through it and understanding it and analyzing it is nothing. I mean, there's a lot of data out there that does nothing for anybody, but to be able
Yep.
to then bring that together is really important. So I'd say that in the next year, I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about continuing to see what our marketing initiatives are doing. I'm excited to see how our internal team continues to wrap their arms around what it is that we're doing and become excited for the changes that they're seeing happening with our business, that we are progressive and that we are a thought leader. We are subject matter experts in our field. And all those things really come together and make business a lot of fun. And people look at business and saying, well, it's harder today than it had been. I'll tell you, it's no harder today than it had been. It's just that you've got to stay one step ahead, and the people who are leading the businesses have to be that much more. Again, I'll say it. They have to keep their eyes open to new opportunities, new ideas. They've got to be reading. They've got to be accumulating information for themselves and saying, how can we apply this successful option and tool to our business that will not just be a fad, but will then set us on a trajectory that will improve our overall business and the lives of our customers. So that's, in a longer than a nutshell, that's what I'm truly excited about.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is the biggest reason for the failure of implementations of any kind of technology, whether it's a single technology or an integrated technology stack. One of the single biggest reasons for failure is lack of adoption. And the reason for lack of adoption is because, again, there wasn't enough time spent on explaining to the team what the benefits were to them specifically. How many hours a day or a week it's going to be saving them, and how much better it's going to make their lives by using these tools. And then, of course, completing the picture of like how it's going to improve the satisfaction of the customers that they're interacting with in one way or another, whether it's digitally or in person.
Right.
every day. And so it comes down again to your point for leadership teams to make sure they do a really good job communicating and it's like any good communication. Now, you have to wrap the numbers in a story, right? And I mean, I could have just said, well, they just need to do change management, but you need to understand, what does change management mean? And change management means you have to invest the time in explaining why it's a benefit to them to use the technology, and a benefit to all the stakeholders, primarily the customer. Yeah. And I think the fact that you have to, again, you're never done. This is, I think, another sort of mindset shift that's happened in the last, 10 years or more, is that, I remember when we first started, we were building websites, and the mindset was, well, if you build a website, it's going to be good for 5 years. That is not the case anymore. I mean,
No.
nowadays, I think, websites are being, well, at least they're being changed all the time on a monthly basis. And, who knows what they'll look like in a year or 2 years or 3 years from now, because again, you're using the data that you're getting from visitors to your website to move things around and place things where they should be, so that the customer feels, the customer or the prospect feels heard. So these are just mindset shifts that every, business leadership has to go through. That, again, it's an example of, what we did before isn't going to work today, because technology is now so, present across every function of the business. It's that cross-functional nature of technology that I think is hard for a lot of leaders who've been successful leaders for a long time to grasp, because they could always put those things in a box. It was either a marketing thing, or was a sales thing, or was a back office thing. Whereas now the data has to flow through the whole company, and you have to make that integration possible. But you also need to understand what the implications, which are typically the benefits, are of that. So
Yes,
great. I
absolutely.
love that wrap up, and I look forward to catching up again. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk before, but in a year, just to see, how it's been in the next year, what you've learned and what you've potentially tweaked or changed in that time.
Yeah.
Paul, again, a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for being here. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity and really enjoyed our conversation as well.
Good stuff. Paul, take care and talk soon.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for checking out this episode of RevOps Champions. This show is powered by Dynamico, a HubSpot consulting firm helping businesses level up the technology systems that power their ability to scale. If you enjoyed what you learned in this episode, make sure to follow RevOps Champions wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or visit RevOpsChampions.com to get immediate access to all of the latest episodes.